In a not so far off land, in a not so far off time, a tense start to a war that never happened took place. It all starts in Cuba, ever since Fidel Castro rose to power in 1959. His communist regime provoked US hostility. The US's pressures eventually led to Cuba and the USSR to become great friends who agreed to form an alliance. The USSR supplied Cuba with economic aid and military forces.
Hey, Cuba, you better stop being communist right now, cause otherwise we're gonna have to be enemies. Containment policy and all, you know.
What? Nah. In the year 1962, Communist Russia, then known as the Soviet Union, decided to strike a deal with Cuba.
You know, I think we both have a common enemy here.
Who? You mean America?
Shh, not so loud. Hey, Cuba, I have a plan.
What?
You want some grade A nuclear missiles to aim straight at the Americas?
For sure. The USSR feared that the US would take control of Cuba and they would lose their only ally in the Western Hemisphere. Also, Khrushchev, the Soviet leader, wanted to even the nuclear field by sending the missiles to Cuba since the US had nuclear weapons in Eastern Europe and Turkey. So the USSR secretly delivered the missiles to Cuba.
After a US airship identified missiles in Cuba, the president at the time, John F. Kennedy, was notified immediately.
Did I hear nuclear missiles? And what was it? Cuba? Wait, that's kind of close and they're a communist country. So maybe I should interfere, cause you know, containment policy and whatnot.
And so they did. Soon in October of 1962, around the time the US heard the news, they blockaded Cuba, preparing for an invasion.
Okay, this is the plan. We will use our ships to seal Cuba, cutting off all its resources. Maybe then they'll stop bothering me.
Help! The US is advancing. I repeat, the US is advancing. Russia, please send backup.
I got you, fam.
Kennedy was prepared to use as much military force as needed, but was reluctant to use his nuclear weapons.
Okay, I don't want any trouble. Really, I don't. Now, I don't want to start an all-out nuclear war because it would probably destroy half of North America. And I don't think the majority of its population would appreciate that.
Yeah, no, let's not make that a thing.
Both sides feared that if they went to a nuclear war, it would cause World War III and global obliteration. A nuclear exchange between the USSR leader, Khrushchev, and the US President John F. Kennedy averted the catastrophe.
I won't attack if you remove your missiles, I guess.
Fine, Cuba, we're taking our stuff back.
But I liked having them.
A day later, the USSR secretly asked the US to remove their missiles in Turkey as well.
Hey, America, sorry to bother you, but I think you should probably take back those missiles that you're directly aiming at us in Turkey, because I'm pretty sure that doesn't fall under our agreement.
Fine, if it makes you happy.
The Cuban Missile Crisis ended in the signing of the Limited Nuclear Ban Treaty, and the establishment of the hotline between Washington and Moscow was created to avoid future issues, because you know, blowing up the world in a nuclear war is never ideal.